A silent K-9 sits beside a rusted tank in the Nevada desert, still alert, listening. But what he detects buried beneath the sand isn't just old steel. It's a secret the U.S. military tried to erase. His handler, a grieving Marine, believes his son died in combat. But the dog knows better. What if your memories could live on in a dog's mind? Hit subscribe if you believe loyalty never dies. And comment below. Would you follow a whisper, even if it leads into the dark? The Nevada desert in late autumn carried a peculiar kind of stillness. A stillness not born of peace, but of the land holding its breath. The wind had lost its summer sting, now pushing softly across the empty plains with a dry rustle, lifting ghostly curls of sand that slithered along cracked asphalt and rusted fence posts. Above, the sky hung colorless and vast, like a faded photograph, pale blue turning to bone white at the horizon. Just south of the ghost town of Dead Horse Junction, where sagebrush devoured forgotten outposts and silence rang louder than gunfire, a convoy of 4 military vehicles pulled to a halt. Dust curled around their wheels and settled like time itself, wrapping the scene in a sepia haze. The lead Humvee opened with a hiss, and out stepped Staff Sergeant Harlan Briggs, his boots crunching on gravel with a weight that had nothing to do with gear. Briggs was in his late 40s, tall and square-shouldered, but the war had carved furrows deep into his brow and hollowed the edges of his frame. His eyes, once a clear steel blue, had dulled into something harder, like river stones polished by grief. A thick beard framed his stern face, flecked with gray like ash and dark earth. He wore a faded green utility uniform, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing arms thick with old scars and newer trembles. Once known for leading the tightest K-9 unit in Camp Pendleton, Briggs had withdrawn from command after the death of his son, Jonah. The official report labeled it a training accident, a clean, bureaucratic phrase that tasted like rust and lies. But the whispers said otherwise, something about a prototype, an experiment, a signal. And so, when a decades-old buried facility sent out a brief, flickering transmission 2 weeks ago, one carrying Jonah's military encryption, Harlan pulled himself out of retirement. At his side, padded Echo, a 10-year-old Belgian Malinois with sable-black fur faded along the flanks and clouded amber eyes that glinted with sharp memory. Echo had served beside Jonah for 4 tours, surviving IEDs, mountain raids, and 1 helicopter crash that left his right hind leg slightly stiff in the mornings. Despite age, his movements were fluid, control precise. He wore a black tactical harness with faded Velcro patches and a silver tag engraved simply with, "Echo, do not pet." Echo moved to the front of the line, ears high, nose twitching. He didn't bark. He hadn't barked in over a year. Behind Briggs, a handful of younger Marines disembarked, stretching, yawning, and scanning the terrain. Among them was Private Cole Sanders, just 19 and too clean-faced to look like he belonged here. His blonde hair poked from under his helmet in rebellious tufts, and his eyes had the restless shine of someone both curious and terrified. He was wiry, with quick hands and a nervous energy. He tried to hide behind sarcasm. Cole had volunteered for the mission last minute, offering to handle logistics and gear, but mostly trying to outrun a letter from home. His mother was in hospice care in Illinois, but he hadn't opened her last message. Guilt curled inside him like wire. He told himself he had reasons, orders, duty, honor, but mostly he was just afraid of goodbye. The facility they were sent to investigate wasn't even on modern maps. It was marked only by a rusted warning sign. Property of United States Air Test Site. Restricted area. No entry. The land around it looked like any other piece of desert, flat, scrubby, littered with stone and forgotten things. But Harlan had seen the satellite scans. Beneath their boots, nearly 10 feet under, was a collapsed structure, one that had housed Project Enos. Fan out. Scan for heat or EM anomalies. Briggs ordered, voice low but steady. Cole adjusted the signal relay unit on his back and muttered, "What are we expecting? Secret robot snakes? Alien bunkers?" Harlan didn't answer. Echo had stopped moving. The dog stood stock still, just beside the husk of an old M1 Abrams tank half swallowed by sand. His ears twitched. He sniffed once, then sat. Not a casual sit, but a soldier's weight. Focused. Still. Briggs knelt beside him. "What is it, old boy?" he murmured, hand resting lightly on the dog's back. Echo didn't move. His nose pointed downward, not toward the tank, but toward the ground directly in front of it. The sand looked undisturbed, except for the faintest discoloration, a patch where the earth was just a shade darker, a patch that hadn't existed in last week's drone footage. Cole walked up, saw Echo's stance, and raised a brow. Is he pointing? Not pointing, Briggs said, eyes narrowing. Listening. He stood, grabbed a portable seismic scanner from the supply pack, and began to trace a slow circle around the tank. The scanner buzzed faintly as it passed over the spot Echo had marked, then flared yellow. Subsurface cavity detected. Roughly 7 by 5 meters. Maybe 9 feet down. Not natural. Cole whistled, stepping back. "So what the hell's down there?" Briggs didn't answer. He stared at the ground like it had said something to him, then looked at Echo. The dog still hadn't moved. The ground didn't groan. It whispered. Echo hadn't moved in over 5 minutes. His stillness was almost unnatural now. Ears tilted slightly, breath shallow, nose twitching just once every few seconds. Beside him, the air felt oddly tense, like some memory of sound was still trapped in the dust. Staff Sergeant Harlan Briggs adjusted the strap of his rifle and crouched again beside the aging Malinois, brushing loose sand away with a gloved hand. The signal scanner continued to pulse low amber, warning, not danger, just unknown. "Give me the portable auger," Briggs said over his shoulder. Private Cole Sanders, who had been nervously checking the tablet linked to their GPS relay, startled. Yes, sir," he replied and jogged toward the second Humvee. His boots kicked up dry plumes, but Echo didn't flinch. As Cole rummaged through the gear, a voice called from the far side of the site. "What the hell's going on up there?" It was Corporal Gina Mendez, the unit's tech specialist. She was in her early 30s, average height, and compact in frame, her limbs wiry like a long-distance runner's. She had sun-darkened skin and tightly braided black hair tucked under a faded olive cap. Mendez was quick with numbers and quicker with sarcasm, rarely speaking unless it was sharp or necessary. Her father had died in the Gulf War, and that left a long shadow, one she managed by refusing to believe in ghosts or legends or miracles. "Echo's found something," Briggs answered. "That dog better not be picking up a gopher again," she muttered, climbing over a ridge with a handheld EMF scanner already lit up. "It's not a gopher," Echo said quietly, more to himself than to her. "It's memory." Mendez raised a brow but didn't argue. She'd seen enough in Afghanistan to understand when not to laugh. Cole returned with the auger, his cheeks flushed. "It's all set up, sir. Should we, start?" Briggs nodded. "Drill slow. 5 inches at a time. We don't know what we're sitting on." The auger's blade whirred to life, spitting sand in careful spirals. Within minutes, the bit struck metal, not jagged or rusted, but smooth and artificial, as if shaped recently. Cole shut off the drill. "Metal's only 2 feet down," he said, blinking. "That's not normal, is it?" "No," Mendez replied, kneeling beside the hole and lowering a small scope camera. On screen, they saw something strange, an embossed emblem etched into a steel surface. It wasn't military standard. In fact, it looked almost hand-carved. Briggs felt a chill crawl down the back of his neck. "That's not from any Department of Defense issue I've seen." He stood, brushing his palms off on his pants. "We dig it out. Echo, stay close." The dog did. While the team worked in careful rotation, Cole took a moment to slip away from the circle, crouching behind the Humvee. He reached into the breast pocket of his uniform and pulled out a creased envelope. The handwriting was shaky. He didn't open it. He hadn't, even after 3 weeks, but he did press it to his forehead, eyes closed. Still breathing, Ma, he whispered. He didn't notice that Echo had followed him. The dog sat beside him, quietly, eyes fixed on the letter, not the sand. And for one strange second, Cole swore Echo gave a single, almost imperceptible whine. Back at the dig, Mendez called out, "We've got a handle. Something like a hatch." Briggs stepped forward, nodding to Cole to return. Together, they cleared the last bit of earth and unearthed a steel panel the size of a manhole cover, complete with a recessed grip and locking mechanism. It had no hinges, just a circular frame and a faint groove around its edge. Briggs studied the lock. Not keyed. Biometric maybe. Old school. Cole asked. Experimental, Briggs murmured. He placed his palm on the plate. Nothing happened. Echo stepped forward. He sniffed the hatch, then, slowly, raised his paw and rested it gently on the steel. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then a click, and the circle turned 1/8 to the left with a hiss. Everyone stepped back. Briggs drew his weapon. Cover positions. The hatch opened with a sound like exhaling breath. Beneath was a metal stairwell descending into darkness. Cold air poured out, musty, sterile, and dry. It smelled like sealed time. Mendez swept her flashlight down. Goes deep. No way this was civilian. Briggs turned to Echo, then to the team. We're going in. Cole's throat tightened. His hand brushed the letter again. A war inside him whispered, "Stay. Go. Stay. Go." But something in Echo's silence gave him the strength to follow. They descended slowly. The stairs groaned beneath their boots, but held. At the bottom was a corridor, narrow and angular, walls lined with unmarked panels. Fluorescent tubes flickered to life as they passed, powered by a system that should have been dead decades ago. And then they reached the chamber. It was octagonal. In the center stood a console surrounded by upright cylindrical pods, tall enough for a person, frosted over from the inside. Along the walls, dozens of photographs were pinned beneath layers of dust. Children, dogs, soldiers. One photo, just barely visible, showed a young man in uniform crouching beside Echo. Jonah Briggs. Cole gasped. That's him, isn't it? Briggs didn't answer. He stepped forward, hand trembling, and brushed the frost from one of the cylinders. Inside, something stirred. Not alive. Not quite. It was just wires embedded into something organic, fur or bone. A rib cage augmented with metal. Something experimental. Something built from memory. And just as Briggs turned to speak, Echo sat again. Still, focused, listening. The hum of ancient generators was the only sound beneath the earth. It throbbed faintly through the floor panels, like a heartbeat long buried but not quite silenced. Lights flickered above, weak tubes of industrial fluorescence that had somehow endured the years, casting a sickly pale glow across the chamber's walls. The air was sterile, dry, and cold, with a hint of static, like the breath of a machine that had forgotten it was alive. The room was circular, wide enough to park a tank in, yet filled with a suffocating sense of confinement. Around the walls were hundreds of pinned images, faded photographs curling at the edges, some stained, others eerily untouched. Children smiling, dogs mid-leap, close-ups of eyes, brain scans, heat maps of animal skulls. The arrangement was obsessive, almost ritualistic. Staff Sergeant Harlan Briggs moved slowly, scanning every inch of it. He said nothing. Echo stood at his heel, head low, tail motionless, staring straight ahead at the center of the chamber. In that circle of light, a single machine waited. It was a tall, conical apparatus, 7 feet high, matte black metal with delicate blue filigree engraved across its base. Wires had once run from it in all directions, but now only 3 remained, one of which disappeared into the floor like a root into soil. And across the front panel, etched not by machine but by hand, were the words, "Jonah, don't let them forget." Briggs stepped forward, breath catching. His hand hovered over the metal like he was reaching for a gravestone. Behind him, Cole Sanders approached more cautiously, clutching the data tablet. He was trying not to shake, but the weight of the moment pressed against his chest. "Sir, I think this is it. The origin point. Whatever that last signal was, it came from here." Briggs didn't respond immediately. He was staring at the inscription. Jonah was a programmer, he said, voice barely above a whisper. He wasn't just a soldier. He built guidance AI, worked on DARPA's animal cognition protocols. You think he helped build this? Cole asked. No, Briggs said, eyes narrowing. I think he tried to stop it. From a side room, Corporal Gina Mendez emerged holding a hard drive she'd ripped from a terminal. This system's old, but not as dead as it looks. Power cells are still warm. Someone's been here in the last year, maybe months. Briggs frowned. Jonah died 3 years ago. Then maybe he didn't, Mendez replied. Or someone didn't want us to know the difference. Suddenly, Echo let out a low, guttural growl. Not loud, but primal and deep, vibrating through the chamber like a forgotten war drum. He stepped forward and nudged the machine's base with his nose. The blue lines lit up. Get back, Cole shouted, stumbling. But the device didn't explode. It opened. Panels hissed apart, revealing a hollow core lined with soft mesh and worn leather. Not a weapon. A seat. Restraints hung from the sides. Custom fit not for a human, but for an animal. Mendez approached carefully, scanning with her device. Neural calibration bed. EEG resonance receptors. This thing wasn't designed to read data. It was meant to write it. Briggs whispered control. Or overwrite, she corrected grimly. A loud metallic clang echoed from the far corridor. All three turned, weapons raised. Footsteps. 2 men appeared from the shadows beyond the main hallway. The one in front walked with an air of authority that had long outlived its justification. He wore civilian tactical gear, dark gray fatigues, black vest, no insignia, but carried himself like a general without an army. He was tall, lean, with pale skin drawn tight over sharp cheekbones and short white blonde hair combed back with a militaristic precision. His eyes, however, were almost colorless, washed-out blue, nearly translucent. His name was Dr. Everett Lane, once a lead behavioral neuroengineer at the Naval Research Institute. Disgraced. Disappeared. Rumor dead. But now very much alive. Behind him was a younger man, broader, darker-skinned, silent and wary. Harris, likely private security or an unmarked operator. His expression was neutral, but his hand never strayed far from the weapon slung across his back. Didn't expect guests, Lane said smoothly. But then again, Echo always was unpredictable. Briggs stiffened. You know this dog? I made him, Lane said calmly. Or rather, I made what made him possible. Lane glanced at the open device. So, he led you to the bed. That's touching. Briggs raised his rifle. You were part of Project Enos. I was Enos, Lane said. And your son, Jonah, was the only one with a conscience strong enough to resist me. Too bad it got him killed. The words dropped like stones. Briggs lunged, but Echo was faster. The dog snarled and leapt, but Harris stepped between, raising a high-frequency pulse device and firing. Echo collapsed mid-air, yelping, twitching as if struck by lightning. Echo! Briggs roared. Mendez fired, but Lane ducked. Harris returned fire, control bursts. Cole dragged Briggs behind console. EMP won't kill him, Lane called out. Just wipes the connection temporarily. But he'll come back. They always do. As the team scrambled for position, Mendez reached the emergency comm device. HQ, this is Delta One. We've got contact. Unauthorized personnel, hostile. Send backup now. Coordinates transmitting. Lane laughed. You won't get backup in time. This base is buried on every level. You'd have better luck calling Mars. Suddenly, Echo stirred. The dog's head lifted, eyes dazed but focused. He looked not at Lane, not at Briggs, but at the bed, and he ran toward it. Itchel, no, Briggs shouted, but the dog leapt inside, curled tight. The machine pulsed blue, and then Jonah's voice, cracked, digitized, but his, echoed through the room. Dad, if you're hearing this, they found me too late. Silence. But maybe Echo will remember. Maybe he'll show you what I couldn't. I am sorry. Don't let them forget. The message ended. Briggs dropped to his knees. Lane cursed. He uploaded himself. He snarled. That boy. He burned the final sequence into the dog's neural net. Mendez raised her weapon. Then that dog knows everything you tried to erase. Lane raised his hand slowly. Maybe. But what will you do with that? Echo stood again, no longer trembling, just listening. Night had fully descended over the Nevada desert. On the surface, only the faint red glint of a signal antenna and the idle pulse of the parked Humvees hinted at life below. The desert wind howled across the dunes, whispering against broken fences and rusted metal, winds that had carried secrets for decades, and now screamed to be heard. Deep underground, in the circular chamber of the forgotten research facility, everything changed. Echo stood in the neural bed, fur bristled and eyes aglow with a strange light, amber laced with flickers of cold blue. Then it came, a sound that turned every human spine in that room to ice. He spoke. It wasn't barking. It wasn't a growl. It was a vocalization, low, guttural, fragmented, but unmistakably shaped by human cadence. The word was one Harlan hadn't heard in 2 years. Dad. The voice was broken, metallic, and haunting, like it had passed through glass and flame. But it was Jonah's. The chamber lights flared in response. Consoles buzzed awake. Monitors blinked to life, and a wall panel behind the device hissed and slid open, revealing a second set of descending stairs. On a nearby screen, lines of neural activity flashed erratically, as if a brain were trying to form itself in code. Dr. Everett Lane stood frozen. His pale eyes flickered with panic for the first time. No, that should have been wiped. That wasn't part of the fallback protocol. Corporal Gina Mendez gripped her weapon tighter. What the hell did you build down here, Lane? But Lane didn't answer. Instead, he took a step backward, pressing a button on his belt. A silent signal. Within seconds, 2 more figures emerged from the shadows, Rourke and Valentine. Both were ex-military contractors, now working for Lane. Rourke, a stocky man with a buzz cut and a prosthetic left hand, had the quiet aggression of someone used to making people disappear. Valentine, lean and hollow-eyed, wore cracked body armor and a faded smile that never reached his eyes. Rourke raised a sleek weapon, short-barreled, advanced, silent. We're shutting this down. Before he could fire, Echo leapt, not at Rourke but at the control console beside him. His jaws clamped down on a cluster of wires, ripping them free with a violent snap. Sparks flew, the lights blinked again, and the descending stairwell illuminated itself fully. From somewhere below, a deep, rhythmic thrum began, like the slow breathing of something massive and barely alive. Cole Sanders stared at the stairwell. That sound, that's not a generator. It's a heart, Harlan said quietly. Or what's left of one. Lane snarled. You idiots don't understand what's at stake. This isn't about control anymore. It's about evolution. You used my son, Harlan growled. He volunteered. Lane shouted back. He believed in merging cognition between species. He was the only one who understood how far we could go. Harlan advanced, rifle aimed at Lane's chest. And when he changed his mind, Lane's mouth opened, but his hesitation answered for him. A beat passed. Echo barked once, short, sharp. The sound was unmistakable. Go. Without another word, Harlan turned to Mendez and Cole. We're going down. Cole hesitated, glancing at the envelope in his pocket. His mother was fading, and he was down here chasing ghosts. But when he looked at Echo, silent, battered but defiant, he nodded. They descended the second stairwell, weapons drawn, leaving Lane and his hired guns trapped in a tangle of flickering power and broken wires. The second facility was colder, deeper. The walls here were newer, sleek, reinforced, lined with sensor panels and biometric readers that had long since gone blind. At the bottom of the stairwell, they emerged into a corridor that curved gently in a perfect circle. It was built like a ring, no sharp turns, no corners, just seamless transition. And all along the walls were cages. Not metal ones. Not for animals. These were cognitive containment pods, vertical chambers made of polymer glass, each with cables and tubing woven into them like veins. 3 were empty. One still held something inside. Cole edged closer, flashlight trembling slightly in his grip. Inside the pod, curled in a fetal position, was a body. Human. Male. Wires embedded in the spine. Thin, pale skin. Muscles wasted. Eyes shut tight. And on the wrist, a dog tag. Jonah Briggs. But before anyone could react, the monitors flared, no longer green but deep crimson. A high-pitched tone sliced through the air. "Security lockdown," Mendez said grimly. They tripped the fail-safe from upstairs. A nearby screen flickered. Lane's face appeared, smeared by static. "You found him. Good. Now you'll understand the cost. If you bring him up, he won't survive. His body's been comatose for nearly 3 years. But down here, he's alive, in Echo, in the system, in every neural layer of this facility." Briggs stared at the pod. His fingers grazed the glass. "Jonah," he whispered, "if you're still in there." The monitors flickered again. Echo stepped forward, and once more the voice came, not from speakers, but from Echo himself. "Dad, don't bring me back. Not like this. But the data, they can't have it. They'll use it again." Briggs shut his eyes. "You want me to destroy it?" Echo didn't answer. He didn't have to. Briggs turned to Mendez. "Set charges on the data course. I want this entire wing buried." "But what about?" Cole started. "Take the body," Briggs said, voice shaking. "We bury him under sky, not under cables." Cole nodded and moved to carefully unseal the pod, heart hammering. Above, Echo circled the room, then sat by the central console. His ears twitched, his tail thudded once against the floor. His job was not done. The wind above was savage, tearing across the Nevada desert in fierce, rattling bursts, dragging dust and old prayers across the stars. The night sky shimmered with cold indifference. But beneath the sand, beneath layers of wire and regret, something ancient stirred, a convergence of flesh, code, and memory that had never been meant to endure. In the lower chamber, lit only by the emergency strips running along the floor, Cole Sanders stood frozen. His eyes were locked on the containment pod, now open empty. Jonah's body, fragile and pale, had been lifted out with care, wrapped in one of the old thermal blankets, carried on Briggs's back with a reverence that silenced even Mendez. But Cole's hands trembled not from grief, from fear. He had tried to leave hours earlier. Slipped into the corridor, rucksack on his shoulder, letter to Briggs tucked under a gear crate. Nothing poetic, just a goodbye. His mind had been set. He would catch the next convoy, call his mother one last time, and make peace with the pieces he had left behind. But Echo had blocked his path. The aging Malinois had appeared like a shadow in the hallway, standing between Cole and the exit ramp. No bark, no growl, just presence. When Cole stepped forward, Echo gently grabbed his pant leg, not biting but firm, unmoving, eyes glowing faintly with something human. Cole had looked down and whispered, "You don't get it, dog. I have someone too." But Echo held on. Now, hours later, he understood why. Because Echo had become more than Echo, and Jonah had not completely died. The artificial organism they had discovered deeper in the facility wasn't just a backup. It was the product of Jonah's last act of rebellion, an experimental neural hybrid, a biotechnical creature built with Jonah's cognitive imprint encoded across semi-organic circuits. The shell resembled Echo, but the data inside pulsed like an echo of Jonah's mind, fragmented, incomplete, but alive. Mendez stood beside Cole, running scans over the synthetic creature now secured inside a mobile stasis capsule. Her face was lit by the tablet glow, expression narrowed to sharp focus. "You're saying this thing is Jonah?" she asked. Briggs, setting the real Jonah's body down gently on a field stretcher, didn't look up. "I'm saying it's what he became to survive." Echo sat nearby, watching the hybrid intently. No aggression, no fear, just familiarity. Cole crouched down. If Echo has Jonah's neural map, and this creature has it too, it's not just a copy, Mendez interrupted. It's a failsafe. Jonah didn't trust the facility. He split himself. The original imprint fused into Echo through years of contact. But this is what they were building behind his back. A host. Something permanent. From the back of the chamber, a new voice cracked the silence. "Well, hell, you boys really did dig up a ghost." The team turned, weapons half raised but stopped. At the top of the ramp stood Special Agent Marla Fenwick, tall and square-built in her early 50s, hair cropped short and silver at the roots. She wore a DHS tactical jacket over desert camouflage, dust still clinging to her boots from the climb. Her eyes were the color of old oak bark. Hard, watchful, unreadable. Years ago, she had investigated the Black River biotech leak and earned a reputation for burning corrupt labs to the ground without waiting for red tape to clear. She walked in without flinching, followed by Dr. Olivia Chun, a civilian bioethicist, mid-30s Korean-American with sharp features, thin-framed glasses, and a constant nervous energy. She held a tablet against her chest like a shield. Chin stopped short upon seeing the Jonah hybrid. That's not possible. There were rumors about cognitive migration, but it was theory. Briggs rose. Not theory anymore. Marla took one long look at the hybrid. We got your distress call. Lane's private channel tripped the grid. And then we intercepted his evac chopper headed for Utah with some very interesting files. Lane's in custody? Mendez asked. Marla shook her head. Dead. Shot trying to burn the data. Classic ending for men like him. Briggs didn't react. Chin stepped forward, scanning the hybrid. This structure, it's regenerative, semi-organic, but it's not fully stabilized. The longer it's awake, the more degradation we'll see. Jonah may be alive inside it, but not for long. Cole looked between them all. So we do what? Let it die? Put it in a lab? No, Briggs said firmly. Everyone turned. I won't let my son be a specimen. Mendez crossed her arms. So what's the alternative, Sarge? Let him walk the desert like a ghost? He's half digital, half bone. Briggs looked at Echo, then at the hybrid, then back at Echo again. I say we let them choose. An hour later, beneath the pre-dawn sky, the desert began to change. The hybrid, who no longer looked like just Echo, but something more fluid, more graceful, stood in the middle of the clearing. Echo stood opposite him, watching silently. Briggs stepped forward, placing a small metal canister between them, a self-destruct core rigged to the last of the facility's data vaults. You want peace, Briggs said, voice thick. It ends here. You destroy the rest, or you let them take you apart. The hybrid looked at him. No words, no gesture, but then turned slowly and pressed its paw against the canister. It pulsed red. Countdown, 0:59. Mendez barked. We need to move. They sprinted for the exit ramp, carrying Jonah's body, Echo flanking the rear. Behind them, the chamber turned white. They in silence. The mountains of southern Wyoming wore their snow like memory, quiet, dignified, and heavy with the weight of things not spoken. Winter had begun to retreat, revealing dark green slopes and patches of awakening earth. A narrow dirt road curved through the valley where a humble ranch stood, wooden fencing weathered silver by time, wind chimes clinking softly in the breeze like forgotten lullabies. The ranch had no official sign, just a rusted metal plate nailed to the gatepost with 3 hand-painted letters, K9. No one came here unless they were meant to, and those who did rarely left unchanged. Inside the barn-turned shelter, the air was warm with hay and cedar. Crates lined the walls, but none were locked. Every dog here had once been a soldier, retired K9S with torn ears, missing limbs, blind eyes, or haunted silences. Some paced in wide arcs. Others simply slept in patches of sun that spilled through the slats. All of them were waiting, not for war, but for peace. At the center of it all stood Echo. The 10-year-old Malinois moved slower now, his hind legs stiff in the cold, but his eyes held something deeper than memory. Something not quite canine, not quite human. Briggs often said Echo had become a keeper of ghosts, though he never explained what that meant. No one pressed him. They could feel it too. Staff Sergeant Harlan Briggs, now retired, wore denim instead of uniform, but the straightness of his spine and the deliberate way he moved told you he'd been military long before anyone needed to say it. His beard had grown longer, streaked more with gray than ever, and his voice had softened, but only around the dogs. He was in the barn this morning, kneeling beside a limping German shepherd named Tully, wrapping her paw with gauze soaked in antiseptic. She's stubborn, said a voice behind him. It was Cole Sanders, now 21, taller than before, jaw squared with time. He wore flannel and work gloves, his once boyish energy tempered by something steadier. Grief, perhaps, or peace earned the hard way. He held a tin plate with chopped liver and carrots. Wouldn't touch the kibble. She's earned it, Harlan replied, finishing the wrap. Like the rest of us. They sat in silence for a while, watching the barn breathe. Echo lay by the corner, tail thudding once at the sight of them. He didn't need to move. His presence grounded everything. That afternoon, a package arrived. The mailman always stopped at the gate and honked once. No one in the valley trusted drones. Inside the small envelope was a single letter, no return address. Just the seal of a hospice facility in Bloomington, Illinois. Cole opened it under the cottonwood tree by the pasture fence. He didn't speak as he read, but something in his posture shifted, chin lowered, breath catching once. Harlan waited. Cole finally said, "It's from my mother. She wrote it before she passed." He handed it over, but Briggs didn't read it. Instead, Cole recited, "Dear Cole, I always knew the world would ask more from you than it should, and I'm sorry I couldn't be the reason you stayed. But I'm grateful you found something else worth staying for. You didn't leave to chase peace. You stay to make it. That's how we honor the broken, by being strong in their place. Love you always. Mom." The breeze caught the bottom of the letter, lifting it gently, like it too remembered someone. Briggs said nothing. He didn't need to. He simply laid a hand on Cole's shoulder, firm and silent. That evening, as the stars came out one by one, the dogs gathered outside the barn. It happened sometimes. They would wander out together and lie in the field like they were stargazing. Echo always led the way, pacing the outer edge as if drawing a circle of protection. Tonight, a new dog arrived, a black Labrador with a missing eye and a bullet scar across her ribs. Her name tag read, Sarah. She had been found abandoned near the Utah border, still wearing her old MP harness. Her fur was coarse with neglect, but her steps were light, cautious yet deliberate. She limped toward the gate, but did not bark. Echo rose from the group and approached. For a long moment, they simply stood nose to nose. Then Echo turned and led her into the barn. Cole watched from the porch. He always knows which ones need him most. Jonah did too, Harlan murmured. It was the first time he'd said his son's name aloud in months. Later that night, Briggs entered the old tool shed behind the main cabin. It had become something of a sanctuary, a place to remember. Inside were two small shelves. On one sat Jonah's helmet and dog tags, resting atop a folded flag. On the other, a framed photo, Jonah as a boy, holding a puppy that would one day become Echo. Beside the photo was a data chip, the last known copy of Jonah's neural map. Briggs stared at it for a long time. Then he opened the drawer, placed the chip inside, and locked it. Some things were meant to be remembered. Others were meant to be buried. Not with fear, but with love. Outside, Echo sat facing the tree line. His ears flicked at every shift in wind, every crackle of twig. Somewhere between dog and something more, he remained the last vessel of a boy who had wanted nothing more than to keep others safe. No one ever asked what Echo remembered. They only knew that when new dogs arrived, he would greet them first. Not barking, just listening. Sometimes, what we lose doesn't return the way we hope, but in another form, in another life, it finds its way back to us. Echo didn't just carry the memory of Jonah. He carried the love, the loyalty, the unfinished promise. And in a quiet corner of the world, that promise turned into healing. This story isn't just about war or science or sacrifice. It's about the invisible threads that bind us, between father and son, between animal and human, between past and redemption. In a world that often forgets, Echo reminded us that remembrance can be its own kind of resurrection. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment below and tell us how love has returned to your life in unexpected ways. And if you believe that no soul is ever truly lost, just transformed, type amen in the comments. Subscribe to our channel to keep stories like this alive. May God bless every quiet heart, every silent companion, and every echo still waiting to be heard.